Welcome to the Jewish Education Experience podcast with your hosts, Yasmina and Ari, who will be uncovering gems of wisdom with Jewish educators from around the world.
To our audience, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support, and we appreciate you sharing our podcast with others also. Please consider supporting our podcast financially by contributing via Zelle, jewisheducationpodcast@gmail.com, or by joining our Patreon community, www.patreon.com/Jewish Education Experience Podcast. And to all of you Jewish educators and students of Jewish education around the world, chizchu ve'imtzu. May you be strengthened and encouraged in your holy endeavors. Please remember to hit that subscribe button so that you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast may not necessarily be those of the hosts.
Our guest today is Rabbi Moshe Schwartz. Rabbi Moshe Schwartz is the head of school at Krieger, Schechter Day School in Baltimore, Maryland. He previously served as the head of school at Kellman Academy in Voorhees, New Jersey. Rabbi Moshe served on the advisory board of the Schechter Network.
He recently completed a 2-year certificate in school leadership and management from the Harvard Business School and Harvard Graduate School of Education.
And Rabbi Moshe is a lifelong New York Jets and Mets fan. Some people could relate to that. Hello, Rabbi Moshe. Welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
So great to be here with you.
Well, it's really our pleasure. Rabbi Moshe, will you please tell us a bit more about yourself and how you began your journey in education?
Sure. Thank you for introducing me and giving a little of my bio. And I actually think that in many ways, my journey began before I was even born, because I'm the child of two Jewish educators. My father of blessed memory was a congregational rabbi, a teacher, an educator, a Masader Gitin for many years. And my mother is a historian, professor, and now currently serves as the chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary. So I feel in many ways that Jewish education was in my blood from birth. And I'm a third generation rabbi and a fourth generation graduate of the Jewish Theological Seminary. So
wow,
there's a lot of Jewish education. And my 6-word memoir might be tried everything, ended in family business. So that pretty much sums it up. My wife, Aviva, works at the Associated here, the Jewish Federation in Baltimore. And we have 3 wonderful children, ranging in age from our oldest, Eliezer, in 15, to our youngest, Rena, who is 11.
Wow, very cool. How is living in Baltimore versus the Cherry Hill area?
Well, there's certainly a more robust Jewish community here in Baltimore, but it does put us farther away from family. My wife's from the Midwest, but I'm a native New Yorker, and that's where the Mets and Jets sports loyalty comes from. So I spent 18 years in Long Island and started my career professionally as the rabbi at Schechter, Long Island. We lived in the Plainview, Syosset area of Long Island. So I like to humorously say that I'm really on my way to Florida and I'm making a 30-year stop in Baltimore, as most Long Islanders joke, but the truth is that we moved here because this is a wonderful community, and there's just so much here for myself professionally, for us, and for our children in terms of Jewish education, kosher food, and all the infrastructure of a strong and solid Jewish community.
Very true. And I think you probably know Ami Munson, right?
I know Ami Monson, and I have been a contestant on the game show Who Knows One, and Ami is a frequent guest and collaborator. I've only been on once, and proud to say that my show ended with a win in 7.5 minutes, and I didn't even call Ami.
Oh, how about that? Yeah, we're very good friends with Ami also.
Our parents go back many years because my mother taught at Gratz College with his mother many years ago. And so our families, and obviously both our fathers were rabbis. So there are many, many connections between our families dating back to the Philly years, as they say.
Very cool. All right. Well, obviously you come from a line of educators, and I'm sure your parents had a huge influence on you. But are there any other educators though that you admire or influenced you?
Absolutely. And aside from the family members who certainly played an impact on me, one of the educators that continues to inspire me to this day is Rabbi Aaron Frank, who heads a wonderful day school in the Riverdale area of the Bronx in New York, and had been here in Baltimore for many years prior. But Aaron was actually my Rosh Edah at Camp Ramah in the Berkshires in 1991.
Wow.
And we've touched ever since. He flew to our wedding in Indianapolis in 2003. And he models Jewish education and even though he's a formal administrator in a day school, he models experiential learning and has always done that. And I think that he serves as a great role model for me. When I was in my second year of rabbinical school and everyone assumed I would go into the pulpit, I paid a secret visit down here to Baltimore to Beth Tefillah School where he was the principal. And I sat with him and he said, come, we're going to go have lunch. And we pulled up 2 trays and with the students. And I said, do you do this all the time? And he said, every day. And that really gave me an understanding of just how inspiring day school education could be. And I cultivated and chose that kind of line for myself as a part of my career path based on the model that I saw from Aaron.
Wow. So it's amazing that we as educators can really inspire our students to enter that path, to continue learning, and who knows, maybe become rabbi.
Absolutely. There's more than one of our past students has become a rabbi, and I am thrilled for them. But more than that are all the ones who are committed and educated Jews and engaged in their communities to this day.
It's definitely a big deal. We want to have that continuity. How do you talk about God, and how might this differ with various age groups that you work with?
Well, it's a very deep question because I don't actually think that there's one way to talk about God. But in school in general, the philosophy and my philosophy is really that all questions about God and all approaches are welcome. I remember once being asked by a student, which was a very sharp and witty question, how did Bnei Israel receive the Torah if they are in the Torah? And when you're studying Parshat HaShavua, think about that question. And I was stumped. I didn't know how to answer. Great question, but it begs the bigger question of who wrote the Torah and are we obligated in these mitzvot and what do they mean in our lives? And part of it is a journey. And I think what I do is try and acknowledge that there's really difficult questions that we're grappling with. And if we make space for God talk in the school in general, that's a huge step because there isn't enough space and room to even have those conversations. So we're also blessed that our school, Krieger Schechter, is housed at Chizuk Emunah congregation. No less than 7 clergy in the shul every day. So we are able to draw on a myriad of resources and depth and breadth and experience to engage our students in all different ways. I don't hesitate for a minute to invite one of my colleagues from the congregation or the director of the religious school or one of our middle school rabbis to come into the lower school to engage our students in those conversations. And I think the last piece is really about the deep study of the text, because we do study text and we don't shy away from it. And it's okay to study the Akedah and not know all of the answers to why that story happens. So if we wrestle with God in our history and tradition, then we can engage with God in our lives today. So
for sure,
how we try and approach it.
I definitely agree with that. And also just having, like you mentioned, that open and honest dialogue. We should be so careful to put our thoughts in what we're saying when our students ask questions. And so we are careful not to turn them off either, because they're questioning, they're curious, right? But depending on how we answer, we could say the wrong thing and then they're done. Have you experienced that?
Because one of my teacher's favorite sayings was tafasta maruba lo tafasta. And if you try, which loosely translated, if you try and do too much, you end up with nothing.
Right.
And I really firmly believe that mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma, that sometimes kids are doing it even for the wrong reasons, or not even, or without the proper intent, but just immersing themselves and engaging with them. Ultimately, it becomes lishma, it becomes sacred, because they understand that I don't have all the answers either, but yet my faith drives me to believe and to observe. And so I model that behavior for students by wearing a kippah, by putting on talit and tefillin every single day, by davening regularly and benching after meals and doing those things. Students see that, even if I'm questioning or challenged, those are important. I'll just share that, I lost my brother in a tragic accident in 2003, and then my father died of brain cancer suddenly 5 months later in 2004. Aviv and I were married in between, and I was in rabbinical school at the time, and yet, saying Kaddish twice in a year, being challenged with questions, becoming the sort of family rabbi at age 26, as they say.
Wow.
Those are things that can challenge any individual, and let alone a committed and observant Jew like myself. And having gone through and wrestled and struggled with my own faith and my own beliefs, and questioning, why did this happen, and God. And I don't need Harold Kushner's book, although it's brilliant, and I deeply respect Rabbi Kushner, and asking those questions are critically important to the lifelong struggle of and immersion in this type of dialogue. And so by acknowledging that to my students and to my colleagues allows me to have a say in the game and a place at the table. But I don't find myself any more knowledgeable than others when it comes to the answers about God.
Oh, may their memories be for a blessing at that. Wow. So after your father died, did you take over the pulpit position at the synagogue where he was, or?
No,
Okay.
he had left the pulpit a year prior, and he was teaching in Manhattan and had just accepted a position right before his death in another educational setting. He did something that was amazing, and then my mother's father, Rabbi Mordechai Rubin, Zichrono Livracha, was a congregational rabbi too. So my father saved all the sermons of Rabbi Rubin and then added his sermons, and you can kind of see the they used to start out on paper. They were taped to the index cards. My grandfather would just write out a couple of words and say Rashi on this pasuk, and you sort of have to figure out what the end of the sermon is. My father wrote them out, and you see the evolution of the printer as well, where he used to use whiteout or red or whatever. And over time, I don't preach every Shabbat in a shul or congregational setting, but I've written many divrei Torah, and I add them in hard copy to the file, although mine are saved in a Google Drive as well, so that hopefully one day my children and future generations will have multiple generations of divrei Torah. So I try and sort of seek to expand on the divrei Torah that they gave by adding a new twist or teaching or a different commentary to it. And it pushes me to learn each week. It's a great treasure that I have in alphabetical order, as they say, from Breshit all the way to Simchat Torah.
Well, that is really fascinating that you have that and you're able to expand on that. And I feel like that ties in with the next question about chinuch, education. It can be a bit of an amorphous term. How would you define education?
I agree with you that it's an amorphous term, and I mentioned a couple ways already, I think, in a sense of modeling the behavior, because more important than how we define it is how we talk about it. So seeing every moment as a learning experience, making mistakes, trying things out, being in an environment where it's okay to take risks, to have those kind of conditions set so that learning can take place, that permits education. So on the second floor of our school, right outside the faculty room in a hallway, are two signs. One is a dedication to the teachers and the other is an artist's drawing. The first one says Chanoch Lanar al Pi Darko, which is basically educate the child according to his or her own way. And the second says Vishinantam Levanecha. And I feel that by every time I walk down that hallway, it reminds me that we have this command to teach, but that we have to do it in different ways. And I think it's cliche to say differentiated instruction, but that's powerful too, to remind us that there isn't one way to learn, there isn't one way to experience. And I've been soaking it in ever since, I was a child. But each teaching, whether it's my mother, my father, my grandfather, all of them have, or all of the educators that have inspired me every day, each of them offers a different nugget of wisdom, and to take it all in together is really chinuch. So I hope that I'm just part of passing down that tradition and doing it formally, informally. Anything that helps the student learn, grow, and develop is education to me. And I do hope that the education that we provide in the school that I run is done with in the most nurturing environment and with empathy and love.
It sounds like you're doing a good job.
I hope
that up. Yeah, for sure.
Our enrollment is up for a 6th year in a row, so that is a sign that we are fulfilling our mission.
See, there you go. And I love that you said in your school you have the two quotes there, from the Shema and then from Mishle.
Yeah, Mishle.
So that's really awesome that you see that, and then I'm sure your students see that too.
Every day.
What do you find to be the biggest challenge that you've faced as an educator?
Well, you're speaking to me in August 2021, a month before the start of another school year with a lot of uncertainty. So stating the obvious, it would certainly have to be the global pandemic and COVID-19 and everything. In January 2020, the professor from Johns Hopkins came to see us at the school. He was an alumni parent, and he gave me this, hastily prepared tripart brochure that said coronavirus, what you need to know. And
wow. This was early on.
This was before it was even a thing. It was before there was a first case in the United States, actually. And he said to me, this is going to be big. I don't know how big, but I've spent my career studying infectious disease. You're going to want to prepare an emergency learning plan.
Wow.
And I said, emergency learning, because we're going to want to teach about the virus? And he said, no, emergency learning, like you're going to be out of school for a couple weeks while the flu-ish thing called coronavirus hits everybody. So I said, okay, so we'll go to Pesach vacation a little early, and we'll have emergency learning. But having that heads up and putting together a task force really allowed us to be thoughtful and to transition our whole school over to Google Classroom, to give kindergartners email addresses so they could access their work. And we transitioned and pivoted, in a rapidly changing environment. And so while the challenge in and of itself probably wasn't unique just to Jewish educators, because all schools had to deal with this, was a part that was specific to Jewish education, which is how do we keep teaching and educating our students? How do we do tefillah? How do we teach trope? How do we prepare the B'nai Mitzvah? How do we do our singing and our ruach and all of that? And, sadly, we lost several people in the community, including the husband of a beloved teacher, the father of another teacher. And I had never done a Zoom Shiva call before, but I led 2 for all our students, and students with 30, 40 kids every 30 minutes coming to see the teachers on Zoom to it was more people than would come if the Shiva was in person. So I think that the main challenge was how to adjust and adapt my skills and our needs to address that major moment in time, and now to learn from it and to take from it and to build our school and strengthen our community once again as we return this fall. We were in person all last year.
Okay.
First in hybrid and then fully in person, but we still have to build our community up this year. Plus, we have 75 new students, which is exciting.
Wow, that is exciting.
I want to add, I actually think that the other challenge is really still showing the world and certainly parts of the Jewish community what the so what, as I call it, is. Why should my child spend 35% of his or her day in Jewish education, 40%, whatever the amount is? There isn't this middle. As we know in this country right now, it's challenging to find the middle ground. There's a lot of us versus them, left versus right, and staying completely out of the politics myself. I find myself to be a centrist and to be a middle of the road person, a collaborative and adaptive leader, and to provide space for disagreement, which is a hallmark of our people. It's Rav and Shmuel, it's Hillel and Shammai. It's who we are as a people. And I don't want to lose that dialogue. So I work very hard on one of the challenges here is I work very hard on building relationships with my colleagues in the reform movement, with the 12 or 13 other Orthodox day schools in this community. I'm sort of a lone voice in many ways, but I meet with them regularly. I visited, Talmudical Academy, and I visited Ner Yisrael, and I've been to these schools, and I learn from them and share with them, and that just keeping the lines of communication open and the dialogue is extremely critically important to the challenges we face, because we need colleagues to collaborate with going forward.
In my opinion, that is also something we need to do more of. We're a community, no matter what our observance level is, whether we're Orthodox, Reform, whatever, conservative, whatever it is. So I definitely agree with you. And it's important for us to find all those things that really unite us instead of all those things that divide us up.
I agree with you. And Ken Yehi Ratzon.
How do you stay motivated as an educator?
Just returned from 2 weeks in Israel, leading a mission of Jewish educators as part of a JNF USA and Karen Kayemet educators program. So for me, getting to Israel is a big piece of it. I love Israel. I speak the Hebrew language. I want to be there. And making that connection is really motivating for me. Also, playing a little Jewish geography helps. Having humor helps. I don't know if you know, but if you follow me on Facebook over the years, for sure, I'm known and certainly did it more in my 30s than my 40s to get dressed up in all sorts of costumes. I have dozens and dozens of costumes in my school, and I'm not allowed to keep them at home. I think it was in the ketubah, but all those things are extremely inspiring and motivating to me. And I can share moments of humor later, but I think seeing the joy on kids' faces is incredible. Mask or no mask, seeing that child read Torah for the first time. Just in the last 4 weeks, there were 2 families that moved homes here in Pikesville in Baltimore. And I reached out to both of them and said, who's putting the mezuzah up at your house? And I went over both times right around dinner time. The whole family was home. Wow. And he said to me, you put up the mezuzah. I said, oh no, this is your home. I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm going to hold the nail. You're going to put it up and we're going to say the bracha together because this is your home. And that's inspiring. And just 2 days ago, I officiated at the wedding of a student who was in my 9th grade class circa 2008 at Schechter, Long Island. And wow. She said to me after high school, we stayed in touch. When she went to college at Stony Brook and Long Island, we stayed in touch. I met her in Israel when she was living there recently, a couple of years ago, and on one of my trips, and I met her her then boyfriend, now fiance, and now husband, Greg. And she said to me, I'm not so connected with a shul or a community or a Hillel. Can you do the wedding? And I said, call me when you get married. And lo and behold, and then COVID delayed it. And I drove, up to New York and back to do her wedding on Sunday to officiate. But you know what? That's inspiring. That gives me energy. And that was a tremendous moment for me. And I've done that numerous times. So those are the things that really keep me motivated as an educator, as well as regular contact with colleagues that that are in the field and committed to the same overall vision as I have.
Definitely feel that's important. And you can see it's how much of a difference educators like you make when your former students are calling you, they're keeping in touch with you. So that's it's really awesome to hear that. What advice would you give to new educators who are just beginning their journey?
Well, I think I'm going to give them advice that they may be getting from others as well, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm 43 years old, and I hope to be engaged and involved in Jewish education for decades to come. And you need to pace yourself and to continually learn for yourself. I'm in my 4th or 5th professional development course, and I think every year that since I graduated rabbinical school in 2007, I've done a program from RavSec, a program from Prisma, an Avichai sponsored program. I'm now finishing my 6th class at the Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Wow.
I have two secondary certificates, and now I'm working on my 3rd one. There's so many opportunities for learning, both in the Jewish community and beyond. Thick skin is critical. It's not all personal. Remember what you find joy in and what you teach, what you love. Mine is Parshat HaShavua. Everyone has a favorite piece of their educational portfolio. So bring that to your classroom, bring the costumes, and do it with love. And also have great mentors. I mentioned Rabbi Aaron Frank, but I've had many wonderful teachers and mentors, Rabbi Jim Rogozin, Dr. Ray Levy, people who are mentors in the field of day schools, and rabbis and colleagues that I've learned from just in the past few weeks and months. And we should really embrace and take more than just asalacha rav uknelecha chaver. That's a good starting point. Take it to the next level. So, one of my closest colleagues is the head of the Episcopal private school here in Baltimore. And I've taught her the term chavrusa, but we're effectively chavrusa. We learn together all the time. And I've gone to speak at her church, and she's come to my synagogue, and vice versa. And, and in our schools too. And that partnership and friendship really can be something that, for a new educator, it can be inspiring to them along their journey.
Definitely. That's some great advice, Rabbi Moshe. How do you think we can help our students build a proper Torah foundation? This probably ties in a little bit to what you were saying before about teaching about God and everything. What are your thoughts?
Say that, at Krieger Schechter, we have this program that's run through JTS, and it's a national program called Standards and Benchmarks. So that's an approach. We have standards, we have benchmarks, we set goals. Every teacher knows them. We have to communicate them. We share them and we work towards them, and then we reevaluate them. And, like the board looking at the mission statement of the school periodically and saying, are we fulfilling our mission, and are we doing it? And if not, how do we rewrite that mission so that we're staying true to our mission? Right. And so I think the same thing where we have to build the Torah foundation requires us to show consistency, to value questioning, which I mentioned before, personal connections, interpretations, midrash, although you can also say that the midrash isn't the ikar, it's the maseh. So you do both. You daven and you experience and you interpret. And I also think that it requires, for me, keva. People who know me know I appreciate the spirituality. I have a terrible voice. I will not sing in public, and nor should I. But I make time every day for prayer and for Torah and for study. And if we make that time, which is something that is so difficult to do these days, then it just becomes part of our life. If I was as diligent in my exercise routine as I was in my study of Torah, I would not only be a chacham or on my way to being one, but I'd also be skinny. But at least I had a Torah.
There you go. And that ties in with what you were saying before about even doing things, lo lishma and lishma, because then you start off, at least, even if you don't understand everything, or even if you're not 100% feeling like it, so to speak, even if you just do it, eventually you'll get to the point where you'll really have that kavana and that inspiration to keep to go for it.
Like, and the role models that you have along the way, the kids will remember you. So I once dressed up dreidel. I have the dreidel costume, and I went into the JCC to the spin class in the JCC, and the only person who knew was the teacher, who didn't really know what I was doing, but I said to her that I had permission from the executive director to walk in, and I spun my way into the class. Wow. And then I looked around, and all these people have blank stares on, and I said, they told me it was a spin class. And I just looked around, and everyone's jaw drops, and they all kind of laughed. And I think it took a second for everyone to figure out what the heck was going on. And but sharing that moment and putting it on video and having everyone laugh about it, and the kids will remember that, for years to come. Yeah. Those are the moments that are powerful, and they're teachable, because when the kids playing dreidel, they're also going to remember Rabbi Moshe's silly costume and the spinning on the bicycle. And making that kind of connection and using a little humor in that case for the teachable moment really helps establish the foundation and gets the conversation going. And from there, you can at patachlo, and you can run with it, as they say.
100%, I agree. Well, this is our last question here, a little bit of a more challenging question. What does successful Jewish education look like to you?
Yes, I had that question in advance, and I wish I had a profound answer. But I think what you mentioned before actually is really important, which is that, we all need to show each other kavod. We need to touch Judaism with anava. And, I don't even use denominational terms. When all Jews of all levels of observance and commitment and engagement are respected and respectful, so that, the debates of Hillel and Shammai of old are renewed today. I would love to see it also be where philanthropy is quadrupled and taken tenfold from where it is now, because I lament that even with all of the generosity of the donors and the support of the Jewish community, we still lack the necessary funds to achieve our goals and our mission. So there needs to be donors at the door wanting to give to our mission for balanced budgets, wait lists for enrollment of all types of Jewish education, and everyone speaking Hebrew fluent in the language of our people. And for those who don't make Aliyah, at a minimum, a love and connection with our homeland, even with all her challenges and shortcomings, a dedication and commitment to the state of Israel. And I'll just add that, this year, all the Yom Tovim fall out on weekdays. It's one of the worst schedules for working professionals. We have very few days of day school ourselves in September. So what would I love? Nothing more than on first day of Sukkot to see hundreds of people in my shul or their shul waving the lulav, joining in a Hoshana together, so that we can all sing Hallel and celebrate V'samachta b'chagecha. We will all rejoice in the festival as one Jewish people, whatever shul you go to.
Amen.
That would be.
Well, wise words. And I have one more bonus question I just have to throw in, because you mentioned Hebrew. For some of our listeners that would really like to up their game in Hebrew, so to speak, what tips do you have?
I've never used the apps or anything, but if, speaking Hebrew is the best way to learn the language. And I was blessed that my parents, both native Americans who grew up here, not native Israelis, both of them chose to learn Hebrew and speak it to me. And so my Hebrew was strong as a youngster. There are Israeli babysitters. There are, you can have a mitapelet. There's an au pair from Israel. There's so many ways of acquiring the language. And one of them is formal Jewish education of some kind in a serious way. But I think that there are online courses for everyone, and apps like Babbel, and people should learn it and don't settle for the taxi driver speaking to you in Tel Aviv in English. You respond in Hebrew.
It's true, because a lot of times when they hear you speak English, they want to practice their English. It's true.
Told the cab driver on my most recent trip, I said, you talk in English and you correct my Hebrew, and I'll correct your English.
There you go. All right, wise words from Rabbi Moshe. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Moshe, for your time this evening, and definitely really appreciate talking with you, learning from you, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this conversation in the future and move the tide in a more positive direction in the Jewish world and the wider world.
Amen. I really am humbled and honored to be part of this wonderful group that participates in your podcast. And I hope that when people listen, they're inspired and take to heart all of the vision that you are sharing by having this podcast and a few of the words of Torah that I shared this evening as well. So toda rabah.
All the best.